Hey, everybody, and welcome back. We're diving deep today into a really interesting concept, what makes love last? And get this, our source, Ingredients of Simple Love, says it's not about, you know, looking good or any of that superficial stuff.
It really is fascinating how the source flips the script on how we usually think about love.
Yeah.
And we're constantly bombarded with these images of, perfect couples and these big grand gestures. But this source, it dives into what really keeps a relationship strong, after
Yeah.
that initial spark fades.
So it's less about the flashy stuff and more about, like, the everyday things, the stuff that actually builds a strong foundation.
Yeah, exactly. They break it down into these simple elements like spending quality time, having really open communication, supporting each other's goals, finding joy in those everyday moments, and of course, building that foundation of trust and respect. These things, they might seem obvious on the surface, but the source really goes deeper. They show how these seemingly basic things can truly make or break a relationship.
Okay, so let's actually unpack one of these ingredients. The source keeps mentioning spending quality time together, but they're also quick to say that Jace physically being together isn't enough. So, what exactly are they getting at there?
It's about being truly present, I think.
Yeah.
Both physically and emotionally present. The source actually gives this really great example. Imagine, right, a couple having dinner together, but one of them is completely glued to their phone, scrolling through social media. They are there, but are they really there with their partner?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the point, right? This kind of digital distraction, it creates a gap between people, even if they're physically in the same space.
So it's not just about, how many hours you spend together, but really about how you spend those hours. And this whole being present idea, that seems to be a pretty big deal for the source. It almost seems like, it needs to be there before anything else can really work.
That's spot on. I mean, think about it. If you're not truly present, how can you really have those deep, meaningful conversations? How can you support your partner's goals if you aren't really tuned in to what they are in the first place? The source is really hitting home this idea that true presence, it's that foundation for a deeper connection.
Mm.
And ironically, it has absolutely nothing to do with how attractive someone is.
And speaking of deep connections, the source spends some time talking about meaningful conversations. So we're not talking about the weather here. What makes a conversation meaningful in this context?
I think it's about, digging a bit deeper than the surface level, creating that safe space for both of you to be vulnerable with each other. The source says that a true connection, it happens when you feel comfortable sharing those deeper thoughts, those fears and dreams with your partner, and they'll listen without judgment. And this isn't just about, unloading everything either. They emphasize the importance of actually listening, actively listening, like you're really taking in what your partner is saying and responding with empathy and understanding.
Yeah, makes sense. But let's be real. Being vulnerable, it can be kind of scary. It takes some courage to let someone really see you, flaws and all. And even the source talks about how some people hold back out of fear of being rejected, right?
It's true. It is understandable to be afraid. But the source argues that this kind of fear, while understandable, can actually end up sabotaging relationships. Think about it. If you're always putting up this front, you're never really letting your partner get to know the true you. And if they don't know the real you, how can they really love you for who you are? It's in those moments of vulnerability, those real raw moments, where true intimacy is built. And that connection, it goes way deeper than anything based on just looks.
So it's almost like being vulnerable is a sign of strength, not weakness. It shows real trust in your partner. And speaking of trust, the source also talks about supporting each other's goals. Is this just about cheering each other on, or is there more to it than that?
Well, being a cheerleader, that's definitely part of it. But I think it also involves really understanding your partner's aspirations, even if they are different from your own. The source uses an example of a couple, and in this couple, one person wants to start a business and the other is more, career-focused. Supporting each other's goals in this case, it means finding that balance, right? Balancing those individual ambitions with the overall needs of the relationship.
So it's celebrating each other's successes, but also being honest if you think, your partner is heading down a path that might not be the best for them, or even for the relationship as a whole.
Exactly. It's a tricky balance for sure. But again, it comes back to that foundation of trust and open communication. Truly supporting someone means being honest, even when it's hard. Because at the end of the day, you want what's best for your partner, even if it means having some tough conversations.
Okay, so we've covered being present, having those deeper conversations, and supporting each other's goals. But relationships shouldn't feel like work all the time, right? The source also mentions laughter and joy as key ingredients for a strong connection. So What role does humor play in all of this?
When you laugh with someone, it's a powerful way to bond. Think about it. When you share a laugh, you're creating a positive association. You're experiencing joy together, and that strengthens your bond. It makes it easier to get through tough times. The source actually compares this to a relationship bank account. Every time you laugh together, it's like making a deposit,
Mm.
building up these reserves of good feelings that you can draw on later when you need them.
I love that analogy. Like those good memories, they help cushion the blow when things inevitably get difficult. But the source also mentions using humor responsibly. What do they mean by that?
Well, humor can be subjective.
Right.
What you find funny might not be funny to someone else. And the source is warning against using humor to put someone down, especially your partner. It's about finding that shared sense of humor, one that brings you closer, not further apart.
So cracking jokes is great, but it has to be done with awareness of your partner's feelings. Which brings us back to that need for emotional intelligence and being sensitive to each other.
Precisely. You really need to be in tune with your partner's sense of humor. And be willing to adjust if you see that something isn't working or landing well. It's all about making sure that laughter is a way to connect and share joy, not a way to cause tension or hurt feelings.
Now, there are two more ingredients that the source talks about: honesty and vulnerability, and trust and respect. They seem so closely connected, almost like two sides of the same coin, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They really are intertwined. Honesty and vulnerability, they're about being open, letting your partner see the real you, imperfections and all. And trust and respect, they're about knowing that your partner will honor that openness, that they'll treat your vulnerability with care.
So it's like the cycle. Honesty and vulnerability, they create trust. And that trust deepens respect,
Yeah.
which in turn makes you feel safer to be even more open and honest. And this kind of intimacy, it's just not possible if the relationship is based on just physical attraction.
That's a great way to put it. The source argues that relationships built on superficiality, they're like building a house on sand. It might look good at first glance, but it doesn't have that solid foundation to survive, when the storms of life come along.
Okay, so we've established that looking good is not enough for lasting love. But why is understanding this, so important for young people, especially those who are just starting to explore relationships?
That's a great question. And actually, the source talks about that directly. You see, young people, they're often facing a lot of pressure when it comes to relationships. I mean, everywhere you look, it's this images of perfect couples. And that can lead to feeling like you need to focus on, appearances instead of substance.
So they're navigating this minefield of unrealistic expectations, and often they don't have much guidance on what a healthy relationship actually looks like.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial for them to understand these simple but powerful ingredients. It can really help them, It can help them avoid making big mistakes, like mistaking infatuation for actual love, or thinking that all that drama is just a normal part of being in a relationship.
So it's about giving them that roadmap, those tools to navigate this complicated world of relationships and make choices that are aligned with what they truly want and need.
Exactly. And the source really, really stresses this idea of building that strong foundation early on. The patterns we create in our youth, they often influence how we approach relationships throughout our lives. So if young people learn these essential ingredients early on, they're much more likely to build healthy, fulfilling relationships later in life. And not just romantic relationships, but all kinds of relationships.
It makes so much sense. Like those early experiences, they create a blueprint for how we connect with other people. So by learning these simple but powerful ingredients, they're setting themselves up for success in every area of their lives.
Exactly. And it also helps them to make more informed choices about who they partner with. Instead of being drawn in by just superficial qualities, they can actually look for someone who shares their values, someone who respects them and someone they can truly connect with on a deeper level.
So it's about looking past those superficial things and making choices based on who they really are. But even if you know all this, relationships can be tricky. People change. Life throws you curveballs, and sometimes, things just don't work out the way you planned.
You're absolutely right. But that doesn't mean that you should be afraid to take chances. The source actually says that taking chances, even if it means you might get your heart broken, it's a necessary part of growing.
So how does the source balance, education and preparation with the fact that relationships can be so unpredictable?
I think it comes down to the fact that people change and grow. What you want in a partner when you're 20 is probably different than what you want when you're 30 or 40. Life experiences, they shape us. Our priorities shift. And our understanding of love, it changes too. If you let fear of heartbreak hold you back, you could miss out on some amazing connections you never even thought possible.
So it's about accepting the uncertainty, right? Knowing that even the painful experiences teach us about ourselves, about what we really want in a partner.
That's right. The source really emphasizes that all of those experiences, good and bad, they're part of how we learn and grow in our understanding of love and relationships. Education, it can give us a framework, but it's those real-life experiences that really make it all sink in.
So it's like we're constantly learning and evolving when it comes to love, just like we do in every other area of life. And those experiences, even the tough ones, they make us stronger, more compassionate, more capable of building those deep, meaningful connections.
Absolutely. And while the source acknowledges that, no amount of education can guarantee you'll have a perfect relationship, it does say that it definitely increases your chances of finding a healthy, fulfilling, and lasting connection. It's about equipping young people with the right tools so they can choose their partners wisely, communicate better, and navigate the ups and downs of love with more self-awareness and skill.
So it's less about avoiding pain and heartbreak altogether and more about giving them the power to approach relationships intentionally with a deeper understanding of what's truly important.
You got it. And this is where it gets interesting. The source says that when we as a society invest in relationship education for young people, we're not just helping them, we're creating this ripple effect that benefits everyone.
Wow, that is a really interesting idea. So how exactly does the source connect healthy relationships to a positive impact on society?
They argue that when individuals are in healthy, supportive relationships, they tend to be happier, more well-adjusted people overall. And this leads to stronger families, more involved communities, and ultimately, a more caring and thriving society.
That's pretty amazing. It really shows how connected we all are. By investing in relationship education, we're not just helping people find love and happiness, we're actually contributing to a better world for everyone.
Exactly. It's recognizing that healthy relationships, they are the foundation for a healthy society. And it all starts with understanding those simple but powerful ingredients of love we've been talking about.
Okay, before we move on, let's take a minute to recap what we've learned so far. We've debunked this myth that looking good is all that matters for lasting love, and instead we've uncovered these essential ingredients: being present, having meaningful conversations, supporting each other's goals, finding joy in the everyday, and building that foundation of honesty, vulnerability, trust, and respect.
And we've seen just how important it is for young people to really understand these things. It can help them make better choices and build stronger foundations for all sorts of relationships in the future. Not just romantic ones, but every kind of connection that makes life richer.
And maybe most importantly, we've discovered that investing in relationship education, it's not just about helping individuals. It's about creating positive change that benefits society as a whole. Now, that's definitely something to think about. Welcome back, everyone. We've been talking about how building love that lasts, it takes more than just checking off boxes on a superficially attractive checklist. So if it's not about looks, what is it about? Our source, Ingredients of Simple Love, talks about some specific qualities that seem really important.
One that really jumps out is this whole idea of shared values. Now, this doesn't mean you have to agree on absolutely everything, but there needs to be some alignment on the big things, right? Like your core beliefs, your goals for the future, the things that really matter to you as a person.
It's like, okay, maybe you both love pineapple on pizza, but what happens when one of you wants kids and the other doesn't? That's a pretty big difference in values. And the source uses a really interesting metaphor to illustrate this. They compare shared values to the roots of a tree.
Oh yeah, remember that. The source says it's like this. A tree, it needs strong roots to survive storms, right?
Right.
And a relationship needs those shared values to handle all those challenges that life throws at you. Because without that strong foundation, even a tiny disagreement can feel like a huge hurricane that's about to wreck everything.
So it's not about never having disagreements. It's about having that sense of unity that helps you work through them together. And speaking of navigating tricky situations, the source talks about how important emotional intelligence is. So what does that actually look like in a relationship?
It's kind of twofold, really. First, it's about being aware of your own emotions, knowing how to manage them. Like, do you get angry easily? Do you shut down when you're hurt? Being self-aware, it helps you communicate your needs better, and that can prevent things from building up and turning into resentment down the road.
Okay, so emotional intelligence starts with knowing yourself, but it's also about understanding your partner, right?
Absolutely. It's about tuning into their emotions, picking up on those little hints that might show they're having a rough day, even if they haven't actually said anything. The source describes this as being a relationship detective, always looking for clues to understand what's going on in your partner's world.
I love that. It's like instead of immediately jumping to conclusions or getting defensive, you're taking a moment to figure out what's really happening. There's that quote, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And I feel like that applies here.
That's such a good example.
Hmm.
Because emotional intelligence, it's about approaching your partner with that same kindness and understanding, realizing that we all have our own stuff, our triggers, our bad days.
And all of this ties into good communication. And our source, they really highlight communication as another vital ingredient for lasting love.
Communication, it's the foundation of any healthy relationship. It's how you express those needs, how you resolve conflict, how you deepen your understanding of each other. And the Force actually argues that a lot of relationship problems come from poor communication, whether that's not listening, making assumptions, or just shutting down when things get tough.
So it's not just about talking to each other, it's really about hearing each other. It's about creating that space where both people feel safe to share honestly without worrying about being judged or criticized.
Yes, exactly. And the Force actually gives this great tip. Imagine you're holding something really fragile while your partner is talking. You wouldn't just carelessly toss it around,
Yeah.
right? You'd handle it carefully, gently. And it's the same idea with your partner's words and their feelings. You got to treat them with that same care and attention.
Wow, that image is really powerful. It makes you realize how important it is to be mindful and respectful, especially when you're disagreeing.
Yeah, for sure. And this brings us to another important quality that the source brings up, and that's mutual respect. It sounds obvious, but honestly, respect is often the first thing to go when a relationship starts falling apart.
So true. It's easy to start taking each other for granted, to fall into patterns of disrespect, especially when you're stressed or feeling disconnected. And the source, they make this interesting distinction between respecting someone and agreeing with them.
Yeah. You don't have to agree with everything your partner says to respect them. It's about valuing their opinions, their values, and their right to be different from you. It's about choosing kindness even when you're feeling frustrated or you disagree.
So respect is about recognizing that your partner has worth as a person, whether you agree with them or not. It's about creating a space where both of you feel valued and appreciated for who you are, all the little quirks and all.
Precisely. And we can't forget about humor. The source talks about that too. Humor can be such a powerful tool for getting through those tough times. It's about finding that shared sense of fun, the ability to laugh together even when things are hard.
It's almost like laughter is the glue that holds everything together. But the source also points out that even humor needs to be used carefully and thoughtfully.
That's right. The source says that humor should never be a weapon. It's about finding that balance, where you can tease each other lovingly and find the funny side of things, but without being mean or disrespectful.
So it's about building each other up, never tearing each other down, even if you're just playing around. It's about making sure that laughter brings joy and connection, not hurt feelings.
Exactly. And all these qualities, shared values, emotional intelligence, good communication, mutual respect, a healthy sense of humor, they all point back to the main idea. Love that lasts, it's built on real substance, not superficial things.
It's about realizing that a true connection goes way beyond just looking good. It's about finding someone who truly sees you, understands you, and accepts you for who you are.
And it's about working on those qualities within yourself too. Things like kindness, compassion, empathy, and a willingness to grow and learn with your partner. Those are the things that truly nourish a love that can last.
That's a great way to put it. So we've talked about a lot today, but before we wrap things up, we want to leave you with one last question to think about. So we've talked about all these qualities that can help build a love that lasts, but I'm really curious, what do you think is the most important ingredient? Like, if looking good is off the table, what would make you say, okay, this is someone I could actually see myself building a life with?
Oh, that's such a good question. And honestly, I don't think there's one right answer for everyone. It's so personal, right? It depends on your own values, what you prioritize in a partner. But maybe thinking about some of those key elements we've talked about can give you some ideas.
Yeah, like, is it that feeling of really being seen and understood by someone? Like, you can be yourself, totally authentic, no judgment. Or maybe it's knowing you've got someone in your corner, someone who's there to celebrate your successes. A&D support you when things get tough.
Exactly. Maybe it's about sharing those moments where you're laughing so hard you can barely breathe. or those late-night talks where you can really open up and feel that deep connection.
Or maybe it's just that simple feeling of respect and admiration, knowing your partner values you not because of how you look, but for the things that make you, well, you.
I think it really comes down to looking past the surface and seeing those qualities that make a relationship truly unique and special. That feeling of, coming home to someone who really gets you, someone who pushes you to be better and makes you feel loved just for being you.
I love that. So, as you're figuring out your own path when it comes to love and connection, I encourage you to really think about what matters most to you, what qualities really resonate. What are those things that you absolutely cannot compromise on? The things that would make you say, yes, this is someone I could build a life with.
And don't forget, these qualities, they're not just about finding the right person. They're
Uh-huh.
about becoming the best partner you can be too. It's about working on those qualities within yourself. Kindness, empathy, the ability to communicate openly, being willing to be vulnerable, and being open to growing as a person.
Because at the end of the day, the relationships that bring the most joy are the ones where both people are committed to being their best selves, day after day, year after year.
It's about creating that kind of love that goes beyond the excitement of those first few months, a love that settles into a deeper, stronger connection that can handle anything life throws at you.
And that's really what we've been exploring in this deep dive. Those simple but powerful ingredients that can help create a love that lasts.
So as you continue on your journey, remember that true love is out there. And by understanding these ingredients, you're giving yourself the power to create a love story that's true to you, fulfilling, and meaningful.
Beautifully said. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive for today. We hope you've learned something new and maybe even gained a fresh perspective on what it really means to love and be loved. Until next time, happy exploring.
This is DigitView.